Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, June 18th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amita Sharma in for Maya Trabulsi. Schools are closing for summer, but now the work begins to get our teens vaccinated. While rates are high for adults in San Diego, the numbers for kids 12 to 17 aren't yet making the grade. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says officials want to change that.
Children are a large part of our population here, and we want to protect them, and we want them to protect all of the rest of us.
Health officials and Congressman Scott Peters were at Rady Children's Hospital Friday encouraging young people to get vaccinated.
We want them to not have to wear their masks in classes and in sports. We want them to be able to socialize together off school as well as in school. And the best way to do that is by immunizing them.
Just 32% of kids 17 to 12 years old are fully vaccinated in San Diego County, while 44% have gotten at least one dose.
Even though they don't get quite as sick as older adults, they can get sick and they can spread the infection to older adults.
Only the Pfizer vaccine is approved for minors, and parental permission is required for kids to get their shots. 15-year-old Genevieve Shockley from Scripps Ranch participated in a clinical trial to test how the vaccines would work in young people.
I was really overwhelmed by COVID when it first happened, and I didn't know what I could do to help. But then when I heard about the study, I decided to participate so I could help find a vaccine.
She ended up being in the placebo group, but is now vaccinated.
And I did my part, so now it's time for other people to do theirs.
Kids infected with COVID-19 may also suffer from multi-system inflammatory syndrome, but there have been rare reports of the condition in San Diego. And even though minors are usually asymptomatic, each new coronavirus infection gives the virus an opportunity to mutate and become more infectious and less susceptible to the current vaccines. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
You no longer have to carry around your coronavirus vaccination card. Now you can access the records online. California's Public Health and Technology Departments announced the new website that people can use to access businesses or events that require vaccination proof. The record from the state's immunization registry shows the same information as the paper cards issued by the CDC.
For those that want vaccine verifications, if you had a card, it's like having a driver's license. You lose a driver's license, what do? This allows you to have something in your digital wallet, and it's as simple as that.
You can find your vaccination record at the website on your screen. It's myvaccinerecord.cdph.ca.gov. You enter your information and get a QR code to pull up your vaccination proof when you need it. If you are eligible to get a shot but haven't yet, we have all the information about how and where to get one on our website, kpbs.org. Click on the vaccines link on our homepage to find a location close to you. As the nation celebrates the new federal holiday Juneteenth, the city of San Diego also made a new proclamation. KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel has more on how the city is commemorating this special day.
Red and blue with the white star in the center. The Juneteenth flag was raised for the first time ever at City Hall. The city not only commemorated the federal holiday, but proclaimed June 19th, Juneteenth Day.
When Africans were taken from the shores of their continent, so were their freedoms.
The flag that represents the end of slavery in the U.S. also serves as a reminder of the work that lies ahead. Mayor Todd Gloria says the fight isn't over.
Because rest assured, we as a city, as a community, and as a nation will come together and stand together to honor these past fights and to commit ourselves to a fairer, more equitable future.
Councilmember Monica Montgomery spoke about the importance of preserving the culture of African Americans.
I come from people who came through slavery. I come from people who built this country. And without them, America would not be the superpower that it is today.
Local civil rights activists also gathered with the San Diego Unified School District to celebrate the day. The district raised a Juneteenth flag at the Eugene Brucker Center Friday morning, making it the only district in the state to raise one. SDUSD's board president, Richard Barrera, says the district has been making efforts to incorporate lessons about Juneteenth in the district's curriculum.
So as we look and we see who's represented in the flags that fly in front of our district, we're starting to see our entire community and all of our students represented here in our flagpoles.
Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
A man was shot and killed by sheriff's deputies today in an Encinitas neighborhood. The sheriff's department says the deputies encountered the man around 8 o'clock this morning while responding to a report of a suspicious person near Pacheco's lagoon. The deputies say as they attempted to question him, he pulled a gun, prompting them to open fire. The man, who has not been identified, was pronounced dead at a hospital. The shooting is under investigation. California nursing homes are required by law to immediately report allegations of abuse or neglect at their facilities. Yet, a federal watchdog found that state regulators have a spotty record of ensuring these reports are made. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Inspector General found California nursing homes failed to adequately report potential abuse or neglect in nearly 20% of cases examined. And the number could be higher because the California Department of Public Health did not have sufficient documentation in many cases. Lawyer Scott Fikes has represented alleged victims of sexual assault in San Diego area nursing homes whose claims were not properly reported.
The framework that's currently in place to ensure that people who are mandated to report elder abuse and particularly sexual abuse in skilled nursing facilities does not work. It does not achieve the results that it is intended to achieve. And it needs to be completely reevaluated and potentially, and not potentially, but restructured to achieve those objectives.
Fikes says part of that restructuring should make the failure to report neglect or abuse by nursing home staff a federal crime. Without such a change, he says there's little incentive for nursing homes to follow mandatory reporting laws.
There tends to be a propensity on behalf of the regulatory authorities that are responsible for disciplining people that do not report to look the other way and not ensure that consequences occur.
The Inspector General urged the CDPH to bolster guidance to nursing homes on reporting abuse or neglect. State regulators agreed to do that. They also say they will remind, update, and train the facilities on their obligations under the law. A spokesperson for the nursing home industry group, California Association of Hospital Facilities, told KPBS in an emailed statement, quote, "We take the issue of suspected abuse and neglect reporting very seriously and look forward to additional guidance from CDPH. The city and county are working together to help people experiencing homelessness in San Diego. Today, leaders announced a new two-part strategy to address immediate and long-term challenges. A month-long outreach campaign will begin June 28th to connect people with shelter, permanent housing, and health services. The second phase will focus on people with substance use disorders, getting them health and social services, as well as temporary housing. $10 million of the city's budget is dedicated to expanding shelter space and related programs. San Diego is starting from scratch on its effort to redevelop Pacheco Arena in the Midway District. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says affordable housing advocates are pleased.
Former Mayor Kevin Faulkner had selected a developer to turn the arena's 48 acres into a new entertainment district with housing, commercial space, and parkland. But state officials later determined the bidding process violated state law, and the city should have offered the property to affordable housing developers first.
It's, of course, never something that you want to see housing be held up and set back. But if the ultimate outcome is going to be better than what was initially proposed, this is a good thing.
Laura Nunn of the San Diego Housing Federation says restarting the bidding process is an opportunity. The city doesn't have a lot of cash to fund new affordable housing construction, but Nunn says in this case, it does have land, and the city needs affordable housing just like it needs the money from a future redevelopment deal.
And that's the opportunity here. So, you know, if we don't receive the full value maybe that would have been captured before, we are capturing value in the public need for affordable housing.
If no affordable housing developer can afford the land, any future development will still have to set aside a portion of homes for low-income households. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Across the county, the difficult school season is now over for many students, staff, and teachers, parents too. Poway Unified said goodbye to its students today, like those at Midland Elementary. In-class students said goodbye to their teachers, while at-home students returned to their Chromebooks. Many told us they're proud of how much was accomplished during the pandemic, but are glad this school year is over. Due to continued excessive heat, prepare yourself for another flex alert tonight. Residents statewide are being asked to voluntarily conserve power again from 6 until 9 p.m. That means set thermostats at 78 or higher and avoid using major appliances. Governor Newsom also signed an emergency declaration that would free up additional power if needed. Areas like Palm Springs tied records at 123 degrees. Nearly 55% of the western U.S. is in the two highest levels of drought. Farmers in the Central Valley are struggling to keep up. They say they've seen about 15% of their workforce impacted. Dry conditions have already cut off federal aid and state irrigation supplies, forcing fields to go fallow. Now, state officials are warning thousands of farmers about possible water shutoffs.
If you have orchards or vineyards and you're told to cut back your water, cut off your water, you're essentially killing that orchard or that vineyard.
New satellite photos reveal the dramatic effect on California's major reservoirs. On the left, Lake Folsom, east of Sacramento a year ago. On the right, present day. Water levels in 11 of the state's 12 reservoirs are below historical averages. At Lake Oroville, officials are likely going to need to shut down Oroville Dam. California's biggest reservoir, Lake Shasta, is down to 41% capacity.
This hot, high-pressure system is still in place, so the deserts, we're still going to be finding the heat for the weekend. No big changes to our forecast, at least not through the weekend. Things will change, though, getting into next week. In fact, it won't be as hot on the coast. That's going to get to stay a bit more comfortable. So some good news in store for us soon. However, excessive heat warnings still continue. Much of us dealing with this heading into tomorrow because of that threat for continued heat. We've seen it all before. Tonight, the coastal clouds do work their way in, which means San Diego 65 for your low, Chula Vista coming in at 62. Working our way into Mount Laguna, we're back into the mid-70s, while Borrego Springs stays in the upper 80s. Futurecast does show no moisture out there overnight, so we're not going to be talking about showers or thunderstorm activity, but we will have those coastal clouds that make an impact, helping to keep us a bit cooler by the coast throughout the day tomorrow. So the coastal comfort is there, but once we get through the interior, the heat is still on. Big changes, though. This high pressure system, it moves to the southwest and it weakens a little bit. So eventually, with time, we're going to see some changes into next week. Until then, though, we still have a lot of the heat concerns out there, which is why Borrego Springs 115 for your high. Meanwhile, San Diego in the mid-70s for us, Escondido coming in at 85 degrees. So it's still going to be hot for a lot of folks, but things get better by the time we get into the middle of next work week. Until then, mid-70s towards the coast. Not much changes here as you look through the week. In fact, Temperatures staying in the mid-70s. Morning clouds giving way to afternoon sunshine. Inland locations more or less the same. We're going to be in the upper 80s, lower 90s, maybe trailing off to the lower 80s by the time we hit Tuesday and Wednesday. Checking out the mountain locations, this is where we start to see some of those changes. Close to the low 80s, then for Monday, Tuesday, back to the lower 70s. Sunshine out there for most, and the desert locations getting notable relief as we leave the 110 range after the weekend and get back a little bit closer to average towards the middle of next week. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Melissa Constanzer.
Californians receiving unemployment benefits will once again have to actively look for work in order to qualify. Beginning July 11th, those filing for benefits must certify that they've made at least 2 attempts each week to find work. The federal requirement was waived in March of last year when the stay-at-home orders made job searches difficult. Since then, the State Employment Development Department has processed more than 20 million claims and paid out more than $128 billion in benefits, largely on the honor system. The unemployment rate in San Diego County dropped a bit more last month as the slow recovery continues. Figures released today by the state EDD put the unemployment rate at 6.4% in May, down from 6.7% in April. Leisure and hospitality added 3,900 jobs, the most of any industry. California has simplified its rules for masks in the workplace. SDSU's Mira Kopik explains how this fits into our economic recovery for the Friday Business Report.
And so they went back and looked at the restrictions and they basically cleaned it up and really made it fairly simple. Vaccinated workers don't have to wear masks. They don't have to social distance. Unvaccinated workers still would need to wear a mask indoors unless they're eating or they're alone. Let's say they're in an office, they don't have to wear a mask in an office. But the one thing about psychology in this case, from a marketing and business perspective, is really what California has done over the last 12 months. And California, believe it or not, has actually led the country in pretty much every economic category that is being tracked. And that says that if California, who had some of the more restrictive COVID restrictions in place, still it was able to achieve remarkable growth. So California, with one hand tied behind its back, actually had a fairly remarkable year. And then from a psychology perspective, reducing those restrictions, allowing business to actually do business is only going to be a positive, although we still need to stay vigilant as the summer wears on.
As the best golfers in the world scramble to make the cut at the U.S. Open, fans are scurrying to find the best seats at the Torrey Pines golf course. Fans say determining what makes one seat stand out over another is a subjective science. While some like sitting in the same spot all day, others prefer walking the course to see as many golfers as possible. Poway resident Mac McCormick prefers to be a little closer and mobile.
We're following a set through. We watched them on hole number 1, and then we just jumped over here. We're going to wait till they go through, then we're going to jump over to 8 and watch them again. Just love it. Finally seeing them, for real. I watch a lot of TV, watch a lot of golf on TV, so it's fun to watch them and then follow them.
Restrictions don't allow for autographs, selfies, or fist bumps with the golfers, and attendance is scaled back with a cap of 10,000 fans per day. The tournament continues through Sunday. The summer event celebrating classic cars and the good old times now has something more to celebrate. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne gives us the details on Cruisin Grand's return to Escondido.
Bob Enlow dusts off his '59 Chevy Impala and cranks the engine. Bob and his wife Nancy had a Friday night tradition before the pandemic hit.
And having dinner, it's like a date every Friday night, so it's a night out. So
for years, the couple has attended Cruisin Grand, the classic car and hot rod show on Grand Avenue in Escondido.
I used to go there before we had cars, and I said, look at all them old guys, they got nice cars. And so we're one of the old guys now.
Last year would have been the event's 20th anniversary, but the stay-at-home order put a pause to its 20-year streak.
It helped the city of Escondido, it helped the businesses downtown, because it brought more people in from all over, not just local people. So we missed it a lot.
But now the summer event is back.
It means a lot to us older people with classic cars, because every once in a while, you know, maybe go to a car show, but Cruisin Grand, you get to see your friends all the time, and you make new friends.
Only this year, there are some adjustments. There won't be any cruising because of outdoor dining in the downtown area. Instead, Grand Avenue will be closed to car traffic in both directions, and the classic cars will all be parked, giving visitors a chance for an up-close look.
Although the classic cars at Cruisin Grand are fun to look at, the event also brings in visitors, which means more money for local businesses.
Diana Gill, the manager of Felipe's Pizza on Grand, is excited for the event's return.
Super excited, but at the same time kind of nervous because we are understaffed like a lot of restaurants right now. But we're looking forward to it. I just hope people are really nice and understanding that we're going to do the best we can.
The free family event will start at 4 p.m. every Friday through September.
We're headed to Cruisin Grand.
Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Latino, Hispanic, Latinx, Chicano. There are so many different ways to express one's Latinidad. Race and equity reporter Christina Kim talks with community members about the different ways they identify and how they feel about the term Latinx.
The way people choose to identify is always changing, especially when it comes to defining Latinidad or anyone of Latin American descent here in the United States.
And identify as Chicano.
I identify as a queer, migrant, Chicanx.
And I identify as a non-binary, queer, Latinx person.
I identify as Mexican American or as Hispanic.
At KPBS, we're now using the term Latinx, which is a non-binary way of saying Latino or Latina, in an effort to be as inclusive as possible. But we know it's not definitive and has proved controversial, because how we identify and are identified by others can get, well, personal. That's something UC San Diego professor Ariana Ruiz, who teaches about Latinidad, knows all too well.
It's the politics of labeling, and with that politics, of course, are conversations around race, sexuality, gender, all of those components come into play. So that is something that, again, it's so personal that it is one that is emotive. It's one that people have strong feelings about and will lead to very lively conversations and debate.
Which is why we asked you, our audience, to share how you identify and your thoughts on the X in Latinx. We got almost 200 responses, and they showed how deeply many of you are thinking about this many-layered issue. Some, like Priscilla Vidal, who identifies as non-binary, embraced the Latinx term years ago.
When I first started identifying as non-binary, folks is like, no, it's either male or female, and for me, I just don't identify as male or female. I feel like very gender neutral, and so the whole term Latinx kind of feels like that, but it also feels like it's its own movement and its own community.
Others, like Rodrigo Tapia of Chula Vista, prefer terms like Hispanic or Latino because they connect him with his roots as a Spanish speaker. He understands the need to be inclusive, but thinks Latinx erases his connection with Spanish, which he grew up speaking.
It lists a little bit of whitewashing insofar as the language is concerned. You know, because again, to me, Latino or Latina or even Latinx means that you're identifying with a culture that holds Spanish, you know, in a special place within our community.
Another Chula Vistan, Michael Nzunza, also doesn't use the X. He prefers the term Chicano, a political identity label often associated with Mexican Americans that emerged in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement. Like Tapia, he thinks Latinx is a term imposed by white people.
I've never heard anyone use it. I've never heard anyone identify with it. And it's just a term, I don't know if it's gonna stick or not, but it's not from us. Just like anything else, it's not from our community.
And that's a big tension point. Where did Latinx even come from? Professor Ruiz says that's a difficult question.
So there is no one origin story. When we're thinking about the use of the X within Latinx or the move from Latino, Latina to Latinx, the X is one that is discussed as coming out of indigenous communities throughout Latin America. It's one that we have seen used within Latin American feminist circles as well. when we're talking about Latinx within the US as it's tied especially to the LGBTQ community.
Because of the lack of clarity about why people started using Latinx, people have their own interpretations and understandings about it. Alejandra Lucero Canan identifies as queer, Latinx, and Chicanx. And unlike Inzunza and Tapia, doesn't see Latinx as a colonized label coming from outside the community. She likes using the X because it makes people stop and think about who's being left out.
The X makes me think of the people that are not often included in these conversations, non-binary people, Afro-Latinos or Afro-Chicanos, and people with disabilities.
In the end, there's no single definition or understanding of any of these identity labels. But Ruiz says that's a good thing.
We want to think about it as embracing the tension, really leaning into the messiness that is a term like Latinx, like Latino, this question of Latinidad. It's not one singular thing, but one that is much more multifaceted and has lots of different histories and experiences tied to it.
Cristina Kim, KPBS News.
Looking for a new best friend, the San Diego Humane Society is offering walk-in adoptions again after more than a year of appointment-only outdoor services. To celebrate, the Humane Society is offering kitten adoptions for only $25, and you can bring home a second one for just $5. Each kitten has been spayed or neutered, microchipped, and vaccinated. More than 180 adoptable kittens are available right now. You can find one online at sdhumane.org or stop by in person. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.